Hello and welcome to Pro Wrestling 101 with Just Incredible. I am JP John Poz, and of course, the real star of the show, the former ECW World Heavyweight Champion, the former ECW World Tag Team Champion, WWF Hardcore Champion. He is, of course, PJ Polacco, Just Incredible. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure. We've been talking about this and we're finally doing it. And I'm so excited to bring this to the fans and to everyone out there that's into professional wrestling. So it's going to be a great journey and I'm so stoked, dude.
Awesome. Love doing this with you. Been friends with you. But I was actually, it's funny, Goldilocks was actually talking about getting into wrestling and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm trying to think it was either late 2002 or early 2003 is when we really became friends. So, I mean, we're coming
Yes.
up on almost 20 years going on
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. My best buddy
Time
in the
goes by.
business for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Time goes by so quickly. And hell, you were a kid and I was pretty
Yeah.
much still, I was a kid
Yep.
too. I was in my 20s. So yeah, man, 20 years goes by very quickly.
Yeah.
It's
Oh my God.
insane.
Whew, it was
Yeah.
insane. I'm just thinking back, like, oh my God, I remember we went to what was it? Carino's World One Wrestling,
That's right. Yeah.
Ring of Honor,
Yep.
CZW. What the hell is that? That Terry Funk, 3PW. I
Yep.
mean, we went to
Yep.
all these shows. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God. But then you look back, you're like, oh my God, that was, wait, 17 years ago? 18. You're like, whoa, I can't believe how
It's
fast
yeah.
time goes by.
And we still look the same. We still look good, John.
I agree. Maybe less hair for both of us, but
Well,
yeah.
I never had hair, but
Yeah, that's true. You've
nonetheless,
always, yeah.
yeah.
But you shaved it though. You're like Michael Jordan. You shaved it.
I was smart. Scott Hall told me this during the Aldo years. He was like, "Bro, just stop trying to. Might as well be cool and shave it off instead of trying to hold on to whatever straw you have up top." So it was Scott that actually gave me the courage because I was trying to hold on to whatever I had
Yep.
because I had that Aldo mask that was opened up top.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I was
Yep.
like, I felt like if I don't have hair, but anyways, it was for the better.
Yes.
Needless to say,
Yep.
yeah.
Now, Pro Wrestling 101, just throw this out there because it is the great tagline of the former great YouTube series. We are the true pro wrestling enthusiast. We are here for the true pro wrestling enthusiast to educate and entertain because we love pro wrestling. This is Pro Wrestling 101. What is Pro Wrestling 101 to you? Because this was a huge YouTube show that you had years ago. If you look, many, many thousands of views going on. So just kind of just for the fans, for everyone
Sure.
listening, Pro Wrestling 101 to you.
Well, to me, it was just, I wasn't doing anything at the time, especially creatively. Wrestling wasn't happening for me. I was way past my prime, at least, from what the business had felt of me. So I was like, you know what? Podcasts and YouTube shows are being, they're really popular. And I had a gentleman, his name was, I won't go into his last name, his name was Doug. He had worked for the WWE, and actually, I think he still works for the WWE now.
Oh, wow.
But he was let go at the time, and he wanted to do a show with me. And I said, "Well, cool." He goes, "Well, what would you like to do?" I was like, I had so much wonderful knowledge from veterans from the likes of Pat Patterson, who's one of the greatest of all time, right? The knowledge I got from him, from the Tony Gurrias, the Blackjack Lanzas, Chief Jay Strongbows, Rene Goulets. So, and then the younger generation of talent like Scott Hall, Shawn Michaels, so many great, and Kurt Hennig too. I had the privilege of, and the list goes on and on. So I was like, you know what? If I could just take some of the knowledge that I gained from these guys and just put it out there in a way that somehow this doesn't get lost because in this day and age, things move so quickly. We tend to forget tradition. We tend to forget kind of certain lessons. And as a performer, if you're a Hollywood actor or whatever, Broadway, there's so much information on how to be better and how to, just be a creator, better at what you do, better actor, better singer, better dancer. In pro wrestling, there was really nothing like that. So I was like, you know what? I have all this information. Let me put it out there so at least men and women who are in the business could look for and get some advice. And also for fans who are aficionados who really like to know how it works and what it's about, for them to kind of be involved and to listen. So it was just something that was because everybody was doing shows at the time, and they still are. So I just thought the Pro Wrestling 101 concept was something different. and it ended up working out okay. And as you said, like, we had tons of views, and I had great guests on the show. I had Dustin Rhodes, I had Terry Funk, so many guys. I mean, that's just to name a few, that participated in the show, giving their advice. So, and I just kind of want this to be uh, kind of an accompaniment to that. I just want it to be kind of a, continuation of what that was, because I think now the way the business has changed and continues to change, what better time than to have these discussions. So I'm looking forward to this very much.
Awesome. And just to kind of put you over a little bit here, I once asked Raven a couple of years ago, and I said, "Hey, PJ said he learned so much from you, and just give me some thoughts on PJ, just incredible." And he said, "You know what? He's full of shit." And I said, I took it back. I was like, "Whoa, what do you mean he's full of shit?" He goes, "He didn't learn anything from me." He goes, "I learned from him." I was like, "How is that possible?" He's like, "No, he is the master of psychology. He knows more than I do. He knew more than I knew when he was a rookie. So I mean, he really put you over as a great mind." And Raven is one of the smartest, greatest minds in business.
Yeah.
So just to kind of put that in perspective, Raven was really kind of putting you over as a great mind for the business. And he said your psychology was way advanced even at a very young age. So just want to throw that out there.
And that's so nice. I mean, that's amazing for him to say. But and I, and thank you for that. And I've heard that before. I think from, actually, you told me this before,
Hmm.
which is hard to believe because I never take myself so seriously. I'm very humble. But I always believed, and let's almost getting right into the pro wrestling 101 aspect of it. It was a good lead in. I always approached pro wrestling as, what if this was real?
Hmm.
If this was real, and now I know what a lot of people might think. Well, of course it's not real when you shoot someone off and duck this and duck that, and
Right, right.
do all these things. But in a way, if my whole thing was, when I go into something, when I go into a match, if someone punches me in the face, and this goes with selling, how would I feel? Like, how are you gonna react? Or and I feel like today, and this was going on years ago as well, there's no real registration. One thing I was always taught is, and I'm talking about live events, not necessarily television, but it applies to television. If you're in a 20,000 seat arena, you're not necessarily playing to the guys in the front row or the first 10 or 15 rows. You're playing to the guy up in the boonies, up in the cheap
Hmm.
seats, and you have to really express all kinds of things. And if they don't see that, um, it's worthless almost. And a lot of times, I think young men and women forget that you're playing to the larger audience. For example, one quick, like, I loved when guys like Flair and even guys like Shawn Michaels, when they sold a punch or something, they'd whip their hair back. That was a great illusion for guys with long hair, right? It added to the sell.
Yep.
I didn't have hair. So what could I do to kind of accentuate the sell? Well, I didn't do it on everyone, but when I knew that whoever I was working with was going to give me a big punch, I'd work up a big gob of spit. And, when I got punched, like, a
Yep.
tooth almost flew out. And that
Yeah.
would always, a simple thing like that would always get an ooh and an ah. Like, if I was getting a super kicker or something, I would boom, and it just made it look like you exploded. And it's stuff like that. Really using your body, using your, everything. Because, like I said, people all the way up on the cheap seats can't see that. But if you really use your whole body to sell, it's a big difference. It makes all the difference in the world. And I think when you're watching AEW, which I review on a weekly basis with Vince Russo, we go into it, and I think the kids don't. They're so worried about dead space. Like, we talk about dead space all the time. When I was a rookie, that was the worst thing for me, was when I didn't have something to do. Right, you would finish a high spot, and then it's like, what do I do? There's like dead air. And, as I got older, I understood, well, that's the time you could kind of get yourself over. You could either, play to the crowd, or just, sell the moment however you want it. I wasn't so worried about, I finished the spot. let's get up right away and start running another one. And that's what I think these guys are doing these days. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions. I think if they could do, listen, wrestling has evolved to a point where it's become more of an acrobatic show than a wrestling show, than a pro wrestling match. And I think if the men and women slowed down just a bit, because the audience doesn't have time to register. It's like a movie. It's like if you're watching a movie where it's, all you see is gunfire throughout the entire 90 minutes of the picture, but you get no dialogue, you get no emotion, you get, no, none of this,
Hmm.
and I think that's what's missing, because high spots will always be there. And these moves would mean so much more if it was sold properly, and if they took the time in between these spots and not be afraid of that silence, because you can't have them on their feet the entire time. You just can't. You tire your audience out. The point of it is, it's almost like the way I always looked at a match is like a Rocky movie. Rocky goes over for the first 2 or 3 rounds, and then the rest of the time he's selling. He's
Yeah.
barely, and it slows down a bit, and but then towards the end, it's like wrestling, comeback, back and forths, false finishes. And I think we're so worried about getting the next move over. And it's a shame too, because the lack of selling, all it is it's killing wrestlers' moves. Like I remember where if when Jake did his DDT, and I know I'm really aging myself here, but it's still relevant. When Jake did his DDT, it mattered, right?
Yep.
You didn't get up from the
Hmm.
DDT.
Yep.
Now it's like I don't expect the DDT, if that's not your finish, to put you out forever. But at the same time, you're doing yourself a disservice, because if a DDT ain't going to do it, you're going to have to take that many more bumps and that much more offense for you to sell, to even be vulnerable.
Yep.
So I think there really needs to be a readjustment of how people work. And I'll tell you, watching NXT and AEW Wednesday, I watched AEW live, and then I watched NXT this morning. Um, I'm just seeing the same stuff over and over,
Yep.
unfortunately.
100%. Yep.
I'm seeing the same dives, the same, you grab a guy and you throw him over the top rope, and 15 guys are on the apron or on the outside catching him. No one's really selling. And what selling is meant to do is not necessarily sell just to sell. Selling was the reason you sold, especially as a baby face, was for sympathy. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Somebody, and I don't know if you saw it on your Twitter feed, I certainly saw it on mine. Somebody posted a match between Shawn Michaels, or clips. It was about 2.5 minutes of clips of Shawn Michaels versus Buddy Landell in 1995 from Smoky Mountain. I guess
Hmm.
WWF and
Yep.
Smoky Mountain did
Super
something
Bowl of
together.
wrestling. Yep.
Yeah. And they showed these clips, and I actually went to YouTube to watch the match in its entirety. And it was just a typical wrestling match, but the way these masters played the game, and the way that every punch mattered, every little thing that they did mattered, made you believe, like Shawn, man, this is what doesn't happen anymore. They were simple back and forth, and this is what I mean about selling. Shawn Michaels, out of desperation, gave him a headbutt. Buddy Landell took the bump down, and then Shawn really sold the effect and went down himself. Because if you really headbutted a dude in a fight, you're going to feel it too.
Oh yeah. Yep. It's gonna hurt.
And yeah, and just the way, again, it's what I always said about selling. It just helps you tell that story, and it's so important, because you're really you're guiding the fans along, right, on this journey. You're really the master storyteller. You and your opponent, or your partner, is more appropriate. And I just really think that if the guys and gals just took their time and just really applied themselves to getting that stuff over, it would save their careers a lot of mileage, their bodies a lot of mileage, and it would really be better for us as viewers, because There's nothing I hate more than watching the Young Bucks deliver 15 super kicks. For what? I don't mind their
Hmm.
gimmick. I know what their gimmick is, but to me, it's like redundant. It's like, why does your super kick matter when it takes 15 of them to lose when
Yep.
other people it takes one? So I don't know. It goes both ways, but I really wish that selling would just the guys and the gals would just really go at it every match. If this were real,
Yep.
that's what I always did. If this were real,
Yep. And
so
it's crazy. You mentioned Jake the Snake and that DDT. The Canadian Destroyer is now like a setup move, or it's
that's
not a
a
finish. Isn't that crazy? Everyone does the Canadian Destroyer and it doesn't finish anybody.
yeah, and that's a big problem too because what's next, right? What are you going
Right.
to have to
Yeah.
do? And what they're doing too is they're exposing it because it looks impressive.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's now it's just, to me, it's a transition spot, like you said. And
Hmm.
it's like, what is it going to, like, you keep you keep raising your ante to where, what else are you going to do? And I see more and more now, and this is what concerns me, is I see more guys getting hurt. That I mean, I wrestled in WWE, WWF, whatever you want to call it, for many years and many different generations of it.
Hmm. Yep.
In the '90s, in the early 2000s, and then the ECW version in 2006 and seven. It just keeps changing to where it's more and more and more, and instead of really telling a story, and that goes a long way because I don't see, like, I saw this match yesterday on NXT, and I forgot what the kid's name is. He's the priest, Damian something.
Damian Priest. Yep.
Damian Priest. Okay, and I saw at the end of the match he had this huge egg up on his eye. Dude, I've wrestled countless numbers of thousands of matches for WWE and ECW, and I've never been banged up like that. And he didn't take anything crazy, but their shots are so reckless. And one thing I'm also getting sick of too is I don't know what good it does when you stand there toe to toe throwing these forearms and no selling them. Again, it's like that. I get it. They do it in Japan,
Mm.
whatever. But in Japan, for some reason, it works. I don't know if it's the talent. I don't know what it is, but it tends to work in Japan. It doesn't connect with me here, and it doesn't. It just, there's something off about it. It's like you're doing yourself a disservice, and it also means your forearm sucks, dude. If we're
Hmm.
just sitting here exchanging forearms, it's not like, a Flair Steamboat chop back and forth. These are forearms where these guys are legit. And I see how hard these guys hit. They're hitting them. They're hitting hard, right in the jaw, right in the mouth, and they're hurting themselves and getting nothing out of it. So I think people have to realize when you're talking about selling, and also this stems into psychology, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're basically like, when we were coming up in the 90s, and this is still coming out of the 80s Hogan Warrior era,
Hmm.
everything was still like, there was a lot of kayfabe still, and guys would like legitimately get hot at you if you didn't sell their stuff properly, or if everything kind of mattered. Like, little things that you didn't think that don't matter today mattered then. And they're basically saying, I could throw everything and the kitchen sink at you, and you're gonna no sell it. I think it works against them, and I think that they're doing themselves and their matches a huge discredit because they're just making it harder. I mean, those things, it could be done, but it can't be every night. It can't be every match. And I see this constant, like, at least two, three times on a 2 hour show. It should be something that should, if you're in a heated feud or what have you. So I just would like to see them just step it back a little bit and really get down to basics again. I really think basics are lacking in pro wrestling right now.
And they're working too fast. You know what I mean? Like the pace of the
Way
match
too
is too
fast.
fast. Is that like an agent or a producer? Is that their role to tell the guys you got to slow it down, or they're just not going to listen to anybody and they're going to wrestle like that no matter what?
In WWE, I know that they do listen. They have to listen,
Hmm.
but I think they're caught up in the same thing now. Well, I can only say that for NXT because Raw and SmackDown are still very much different from the NXT product. But in AEW, I could certainly tell you, and I've heard ramblings that they won't listen. You know, the guys, the inmates are running the asylum, the Kenny Omegas, the Young Bucks. I wouldn't say Cody because he still wrestles a more traditional and, quite frankly, a more main event style
Yep.
match. But I've heard people talk about Kenny Omega. Like, I didn't see a lot of Kenny Omega's Japan stuff. And people are like, where's the Kenny Omega we saw in Japan? Because they're not seeing him here.
Hmm.
And I don't know why that is. But I honestly think it has a lot to do with what you just said, man. It's just it moves too quickly, and people are just. It's a stunt show. It's acrobatics. It's not wrestling. Like um, a well placed moonsault could mean something. Even a dive, and there's ways to do that. And again, there's just nobody's selling anything. They're just popping right back up. Like if you did a huge dive like that, instead of just popping up, both of you guys should be selling. That's one thing Sabu did, and he doesn't get a lot of credit for this, but he used to do some insane stuff. But one thing he always did was he would sell almost as much. Like I remember wrestling him at Anarchy Rules 1999. It was a big match for me, and I was going over on Sabu, which was a huge honor. And he did this insane spot where he put me on a table inverted, and he did the chair top rope, put me through it. I felt, and this was when I was still very green, I was getting up before he was, and I took the move. And he's
Hmm.
like, stay down, stay down, stay down, sell it. Get
Hmm.
that almost that, again, that Rocky Apollo moment where you're both struggling to get up. And I think that only adds to A, it protects you from having to do a million things, but two, it adds to the drama, which is lacking a lot in a lot of AEW stuff because what you do see is a lot of cool moves, a lot of cool dives, but I rarely find passion in their matches, and that
Yep.
really hurts. That really hurts me as a viewer, as a fan,
And the thing with Omega, and I know Meltzer say, "Oh, look at his star ratings." Well, he loves that. Meltzer loves that style, so of course, Kenny Omega's star ratings are going to stay the same. But if you watch him in AEW, you watch him in Japan, way better in Japan. To be honest, the
Yes,
selling was better. Maybe his level of opponents is a lot better. I
yes,
mean, no offense, like Moxley or Janela, but they're not as good as Okada, Tomohiro Ishii, or some of those awesome Tanahashi, some of these awesome
yep,
Japanese guys that he was wrestling. So
right,
his level of opponents is down, but his selling was a lot better. His matches with Okada were, I don't know if they're Flair Steamboat level, but they were great. Way more selling than I've ever seen him do in AEW. And the matches go 45 minutes. They're long, strenuous matches, but he's selling. Even when Okada goes for the Rainmaker, he does this. I don't know if you've ever seen this clip. He does this great sell where he literally like almost dies, and Okada misses because he's like half dead. So he's way
yeah.
better, or was way better in Japan. He could say he's the same guy, whatever. I don't know if he's changing his style or adapting, but he's definitely different now than he was. And to me, a lot of it is the selling has been terrible, and the pace of his match is just nuts. How quick that he just goes back and forth.
Yeah, I think it has probably a little bit to do with all of it. I think it has to do with the quality of opponents,
Hmm.
and I think that everybody's feeling in AEW, I should say, they're feeling these nerves of wow, we're on national television now. We're in
Hmm.
this dance where this is on us, right? We got to produce ratings. We got to produce these matches, and I think they have mistaken. More is better, and I think they feel like they just have to just keep doing instead of slow storytelling. And they have the best storyteller, on commentating, which is Jim Ross, who could
Hmm.
explain. I mean, he could sell ice to an Eskimo.
Yeah.
And you have him who, so you could really take advantage of all of your surroundings, take your time and have these matches. And I don't get it. I just feel like this is what they think their audience likes. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they like what they see. Obviously, they did 900,000 viewers this week, so something is not completely wrong. But in essence, really, if you combine the Wednesday averages and also the WWE Monday Night Raw averages, which are anemic at best, it's kind of like you have 1.5 to 1.75 million people watching wrestling on any
Yep.
given night.
Yep.
That's a problem, you know. And
Yep.
I think they need to bring the fun back in wrestling. There's room for work rate. There is room for all kinds of stuff, but I just don't know what is missing. It's like there's no fun. Wrestling is not fun anymore. You know, and the one thing that AEW does do, and that has nothing to do with work right, is at least they've been more consistent of surprising you. Like I like the Eric Bischoff thing, and I liked you know, when Zack Ryder, Matt Cardona came in. So, but again, from a worker's point of view, I think they really need to utilize the veterans that they have. They have Jerry Lynn, they have Arn Anderson. I don't know what Tully Blanchard's capacity is there, but they have Dean Malenko and they have so many others. I just don't. I honestly think everybody's just at that place where, look, we're happy to have a job. We're not going to rock the boat, but you can't tell me that these guys who have way more credibility, no pun intended, than I will ever have, aren't looking at this saying, and I know Arn very well. I've been up and down the road with him. He's the first one to say this is the shits. But you're not going to tell Cody Rhodes anything. And I don't think you're going to tell Kenny Omega or the Young Bucks anything. And just the fact that I said Young Bucks in that same situation tells me something, is that there's way too much power there. And Tony Khan is obviously bought into whatever they're doing. And it's just, again, it's a spot fest. And they need to get back to real storytelling and basic storytelling. Like what I did like, and I know we're not reviewing a show, but
Hmm.
I did like the fact when Moxley worked with Darby Allin, it was both men, and I think this was Mox's doing. He slowed him down. He made him sell and made him really be deliberate in what he does, because he's supposed to be, you know, almost like a new Jeff Hardy 2.0 of reckless and all this
Hmm.
stuff. And he made him slow down, sell, and be deliberate. So when he finally did hit his moves, it really meant something. And at the end, it really kind of told a nice story of, you know, almost not a passing of the guard, but like saying, like, look, you belong, kid. I was once where you were. I was this reckless CCW hardcore guy. You're this guy, and it kind of it told a nice story. And I think if they could come to basic storytelling, and I mean this with indie wrestlers too. Indie wrestlers are the worst when it comes to storytelling, because first and foremost, when you work for an independent promotion, and I've seen this too many times over too many years, where they assume that the fans that come to the show on any given evening follow somehow this, you know what I mean, the indie storyline, like we're
Yep.
supposed to know.
Yep.
You should go out there, and every night is a cold night. You're supposed to show the fans, hey, this is the heel, this is the baby face, this is, you know, almost like a mission statement. Each wrestler, or, you know, whether it's tags or singles, this is what I am about. You should show that in the first couple minutes of the match, and then, you know, go from there. And I really think that everyone needs to take a step back and just really bring it back to basics. And hopefully we can, you know, even though we're just getting through our first episode here and kind
Hmm.
of seeing what this is going to turn into, but hopefully as we go through the weeks of these episodes, I could really put together and do some research on what I really believe is essential in making a good pro wrestler. And I want to go back next week and talk about some lessons that Pat Patterson gave me.
Oh, okay.
Because Pat Patterson was very instrumental in my career, and I really want to go back and take some notes and really think about some of the things he told me, because you know, wrestling doesn't necessarily change just because it's 2020. Yes, the styles change. Yes, the move sets change and the way the work rate changes. But the real struggle between good and bad and what pro wrestling is and isn't will never change. And I think just because we're trying to evolve as performers doesn't mean that these lessons should not and aren't being utilized. Because right now, I almost wonder, you know, what is their end game? Like, they don't go out there. I don't think anybody goes out there and tries to get over. I think that was back in the day. That was a huge thing when you were on television. Is like, I got to try to get over. And I think what you see from on in every organization is guys and gals that don't know what their skill set is, and how to get over. And that's something I do want to talk about at length as well in future episodes, is literally what it takes to get over, A, to a live crowd, and then B, totally differently to a live or taped television crowd. I mean, that's one of the things that I think is most important. And some of the top guys in NXT and AEW really, you just think they're top guys because they're telling you they're top guys, but they're not working like top guys.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's another whole thing. But anyways, that's that.
Well, I always think that, is there any way that in AEW they're afraid that the fans are going to change the channel, like that old WCW Cruiserweight thing where it's like, just keep working fast. They won't change the channel for working fast. Is that come into play? Because I always think, like, why the hell are they doing this and that? And there's no selling, no nothing, no register. Like, they register for a second, then there's no real selling. Like, is it the fact that they're afraid of, like, people turning over to NXT, or is that just kind of a bullshit excuse?
No, I think that's part of it. And again, it's kind of what I hinted on. They're afraid of that little dull moment. They don't give the commentators. See, back in the day, for example, when we were on TV, we were told, especially if you were going over, if you were when we did squash matches, and that's something I'd like to see more of in wrestling, because that serves a purpose, especially when you have a 2-hour show every week. And now, for example, there was a 2-hour show for NXT. Now, in a couple of weeks, you have NXT TakeOver, still shot at the Performance Center. What is the difference when you're seeing the first match on NXT was the ladies match that went 18 plus minutes? What is the difference between that match and a pay-per-view match, right?
Right.
Back then,
Yeah.
you used to have shorter matches for a reason, and
Yeah.
you
8,
give the
12-minute
fans,
TV matches, right?
if that,
Yeah.
so what we were taught was to, slow it down purposefully, grab a hold, let there be some time, so the commentators could say, all right, this is such and such. He trained. He was trained by Harley Race, and he wrestled. A little bit of a backstory, like say
Yep.
what he's about, where he's from, what his career path was like. So then when you get up, do some action, cool. But then you're when you're bouncing around all the time like that, you're not giving the commentators and the announcers any kind of. They're not doing anything for you. They're just calling the match. They're calling the high spots. They're not really talking about you. And like, that's one thing, like, Razor always said, grab somebody in a hold and just sit there and look at the camera. They have nothing, what are they going to do? They're going to
Yep.
talk about you. Here's the bad guy, Razor Ramon. He was this, he's that, they're going to put him over. But if he's doing moves and all he's doing is bouncing around every 5 seconds, you're not going to have a chance to get featured to get over to the large audience. So that's something that needs to change as well. I think these matches go way too long, and I think that unfortunately they're not really equipped to run these kinds of long matches on television, because that's
Mm-hmm.
difficult, man. That is
Yep.
not as easy as it sounds. 18 minutes live on television is, when you're dealing with commercial breaks. And one thing I hate to see, and this is again something right out of the Pro Wrestling 101 handbook, is when you're in commercial break, you grab a hold or you throw a wrestler outside. You don't want, even with the split screen, you don't want to do your best stuff when they're not focusing on it. You know what I mean? You
Yes.
don't,
Yep.
and I see that all the time. I see them on the split screen doing dives and this crazy stuff. And I'm like, really? You know what I mean? That's where experience comes in, and that's where working with a referee, which is so important, comes in. So, they need to nail that down. But again, I bring it down to management. I'd really love to know who the agents or producers, as they call them these days, what they would, you know what I mean? What they
Mm-hmm.
think
Yep.
and why they aren't interjecting more, because although wrestling has changed television wrestling, at least the scheme of the way it is played out has not changed. So hopefully they get it, and it starts. But I don't see it for a while. It'll take. I think it's going to take a lot more than us talking about it to get it to
Hmm.
change.
Yep.
But we'll see. And
Yep.
another thing, and one other thing that I want to make this a topic on maybe one of the next episodes is when you hit the ropes. And I brought this up on. I did an
Yep.
episode on this, and it seems so trivial, but Steve Austin taught me this, and not trying to throw names out there, but we worked out for. I think he was off television for a bit. I think he was injured, and in 2001 he was coming back for a match against Benoit. And I don't remember the stipulations. I think it was like a match where somebody had to submit. And we went up. This is before the Performance Center. We went up to Stanford to roll around and to work. And the way that son of a bitch hit those ropes was like they owed him money. And I asked him, I was like, dude, like how do I knew how to hit the ropes hard, but I'm like, why do you do that? He goes, well, if you go out there and you get thrown off the ropes, it looks so weak because if somebody shoots you off and you go out there and barely hit them, you're springing yourself off. It exposes you. And so many people, if you watch and if you really watch, they do that constantly where they're barely touching them, right? A 250-pound guy, they're barely touching you, and you go shooting across the ring. You know what I mean? It needs to all
Yep.
be a struggle. And that's one thing that I think needs to be tightened up is from grabbing a headlock to grabbing an arm to shooting someone. Like you were always taught, at least the Hearts, when they taught me, you bring someone to the center of the ring before you shoot them off. Because when you shoot them off, they should only have a step and a half, tops two, right? Because that doesn't look so fake, right?
Right.
Doesn't, you know what
Yep.
I mean? It's like you're
Yep.
almost right there, and you know what I mean? It's like that momentum, not just running the ropes for minutes. It's like when you're going from turnbuckle to
Yep.
turnbuckle, it looks
Yep.
like a skit from a comedy. So that really exposes the business. So, that's something I want to get into to detail because there's a reason that I for it, because that's one of the keys to, again, not exposing it, because we all know that, you watch a movie, nobody's really getting killed, nobody's really getting hurt, but you want to suspend your belief, right? And I think it's the same with wrestling. When you can see through a lot of this stuff, it takes you out of the moments. Because some of the best matches where you see crowds like going nuts and stuff is because for a minute they don't forget, but they want to be included in that energy and in that fight, and they want it to be crisp and they want it to be hard hitting. And instead of doing so many flips and dives, and I'll get off that right now, but if they just made it a little more like a fight than a stunt show, I think it would go a long way. So,
Yeah, I totally agree.
you
It's
know,
been getting a little crazy. Now, as far as kind of like just future episodes, just kind of throwing it out there. So let's just say you had an old topic saying, know your place on the card. And that's
right.
just something where it's not just going to be, 2 minutes. Oh, this is, know your place in the card. We're going to, delve into it, go a little old
Yeah.
school, go a little new school, kind of equate
Yeah.
it to your career. So just to me, and we won't really have to go into it now, we can do that in a future episode. Just as an example, let's just say you versus CM Punk from the WWE version of
Right.
ECW, knowing your place on the card, knowing your role, knowing what you have to do. So basically, in essence, you have to get him over. Just like as an example, like that is a great future topic to go really delve into, not just
Yeah.
about that night, but other things. Like, right, you got to know your place on the card.
Absolutely. And I'll save this for when we hit it. But it's
Hmm.
so important because we are all. It's like a movie. You're a co-star in this match. You could be a starring role in the next match. You
Right.
got to take it as like a movie. And I knew very well that they wanted to get this kid over, and it was my job and my responsibility to give him the best match I could and to make him look the best way I could. And whether that's your role all the time or some of the time. I mean, there are times where it's your job to go out there and just destroy somebody in the ring, and be
Hmm.
completely aggressive. And I think that, unfortunately, and we'll get into it, like you said, in a future episode, but a lot of guys and gals don't understand that anymore. It's a lost art. And I think it's partly a fault of the companies that they work for. I don't think nobody's teaching them these things. And I think
Yep.
it's lessons that, I think they wish they would have learned, because it's the little things that get you over, man. Arn Anderson used to say it all the time. It's the little things that will get you over, and your consistency and knowing your role. So,
Yep.
absolutely.
Awesome. Now, just touch on this for a second. Obviously, Pro Wrestling 101 from the famed YouTube series. Some other great topics that you cover in your great illustrious 30-year wrestling career plus. But topics for the show. Obviously, we're doing the intro today, but there's
Yep.
storytelling, there's
Yep.
wrestling schools, like you said, hitting the ropes,
Yep.
learning from veterans, jobbing, getting your big break. The difference between a heel and a babyface should seem simple, but it's not. Promotion, knowing your place on the card. Oh, here's my cat. Um, Indie wrestling. Hey, Lucy. Getting paid, calling a match, staying in shape, which
Yep.
is somewhat forgettable for some of these guys, which is insane. But we'll get
Yeah.
into that obviously. But making it in the business, wrestling against larger opponents, work ethic, locker room etiquette,
Yep.
making a comeback, getting heel heat, working injuries, the importance, like you mentioned before, of the referee, wrestling psychology, tag teams, promos, managers, interviewing with the wrestlers, which we will do. We'll have
Yep.
interviews on the show as well. And of course, like we've been talking a lot about today, selling. So those are
Yeah.
just some examples of some topics for Pro
Yeah.
Wrestling 101.
And this is literally what I hope this series becomes is really an audio visual sort of version of a wrestling school. I mean, these are all things that were taught to me by the Hearts, and throughout my 30-year career. Like, I'm always learning, and the business is ever changing. But the things that you mentioned there are so important, and you would think everyone would know this, especially at a high level, and they really don't.
Right.
And hopefully we could, we'll shine some light on them and on these, topics, and I could just bring my humble experiences and my knowledge to you guys. And like I said, I didn't make up this stuff. This is all stuff that I've derived through the greats that I've encountered in my career, my mentors, my teachers, and I just want to share them with, not just the boys in the business and the gals, but fans who are interested in this and may have a curiosity over the inner workings of the business. Because I think more and more people, for a long time now, have been interested in the other side, what really goes on in wrestling. So hopefully we could bring some entertainment, we could have some laughs, and have some fun. So I'm looking forward to this journey. We'll have a lot more of these coming up, and this was our first one, so we're getting the cobwebs kind of out. I'm
Yep.
kind
Yep.
of all over the place, but I'll do better next time. But yeah, man, it's this is going to be a great journey and a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And just to throw this out there, because not only did Raven say you're the master of psychology, Sean Waltman told me, and you were in the car, said you're the master of psychology. Scott Hall said you know just about as much as he does, and he's the master of psychology, as you know. So those guys really put you over. And I know Jake the Snake was years ago was messing with you, but he said you know your stuff. So it's just great that
Yeah,
those long list of guys that are just absolute legends. They respect you, and they know
yeah,
what you know in the business, and they know that you're one of the greatest minds. And we're going to show these people each and every week that you truly are one of the greatest minds in the business.
absolutely, and it's very humbling to hear. I'm actually blushing, but yeah, absolutely, and it's going to be cool, and I hope the fans really get something out of this and enjoy it.
Absolutely. Now you can join us each and every week for Pro Wrestling 101. But as we head towards the finish line, just want to give out some plugs. At
Yes,
Two Man Power Trip on Instagram and Twitter.
yes.
TMPTEmpire.com is the website. Got a lot of other shows and cool stuff going on. PJ, give us your plugs and what else you got going on, especially with Vince Russo.
Yeah, I got a podcast with Vince Russo called Talking Elite. We go live on Twitch at 10 a.m. and then for the first 10 minutes, then we switch over to Patreon. And pretty much everything else, I'm on Twitter at PJ Polacco, also on Instagram at PJ Polacco. I'm doing a bunch of virtual signings this weekend, one in Springfield, Connecticut from 12 to 3. Information will be up on my Twitter page. And then also later on that evening, I'll be doing one in Providence, Rhode Island. So I'll be busy for the next couple days. And just if you're around the area, if you're interested, check that out. And of course, prowrestlingtees.com/Just Incredible. 20 super cool shirts if you're into them, and this is one of them.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah, tripping with the dead man, and that's a story on its own.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So
So
it
we're
was
definitely
a.
going to get into some stories like
Oh
that too.
yeah.
So don't
Oh,
not think
absolutely.
we will, because we definitely will be doing
Oh,
that.
we'll be all over that. Absolutely.
Now, I think like the way to end the show each week, I think would have to be, got to be your awesome, typical, legendary catchphrase. So I'll let you kind of, lead us out.
Well, John, two-man power trip, Pro Wrestling 101. It's not just the coolest, it's not just the best. Pro Wrestling 101, John, two-man power trip. We are just incredible. See you next week.